Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have a team report from the Sacramento Regional Champion. I am joined by EternalSnowman. Michael, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Congratulations on winning your first regional.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely came out of nowhere. Was
I,
not expecting that.
I don't know. I feel like I've been seeing you do pretty consistently well over the course of the last year, and so I'm not surprised that you had your breakthrough. But yeah, I guess for those who don't know you, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hello. My name is Michael, or Eternal Snowman, as most people know me. A lot of people just call me ESM. I'm originally a Smogon player. I've been playing a lot of different tiers, and then about like 5 years ago, I started playing doubles OU, and then I made the transition to VGC. I still haven't completely dropped off Smogon. I still do Smogon stuff as well, but um, I started VGC in 2019 and qualified for Worlds last year. Was my first year really seriously competing. Because in 2019 I just went to like one or two events, or I think I went to two or three events or something like that. And then I won the Sacramento Regional Championship like yeah a couple like or 3 days ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, and you had a really cool team. A couple Pokemon that people hadn't really been looking at in Komodo and Tyranitar very much, and so I think a lot of people were really excited to see your team in Top Cut and you winning the entire thing once you made it there, just because of how novel it is. But I think Donald told me that you had this team built pretty early on in the format. So tell me about how Regulation E started for you once we got the rules and the new Pokemon, and how you ended up developing this team.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that really came to mind for me was like I was always going to like I always like building off meta stuff. And so I'm never going to be somebody who loads the like most common six and tries to win that way. And so the first thing I wanted to look at is like, okay, we got the new Pokemon. What are the new returning Pokemon that are interesting and that I can make a new team around? And the one that instantly stood out to me was Como because um, I've used it in past generations. I used it in Gen 7 and Gen 8. In Gen 8, it was with the Iron Defense Body Press set as well. And like I have like a strong, like a lot of faith in this set because I just think like Como is like a really good Pokemon with like it just has high stats and it has that body press and people were using Hisui and Gudra even before this and Como is just like so much better than Gudra because of like its ability to like immediately output damage like off the bat. And then also because of its ability to use Terra so well, it becomes like naturally a Pokemon that I gravitated towards. And then the rest of the team, I had actually found five of the six mons, like basically right off the bat. Como, and then like T-Tar was another Pokemon I was looking at because of the knockoff buff. And I love T-Tar like as a Pokemon, and I had used it in Reg C as well, like during my run in NAIC. And then from there, like Hisui and Arcanine plus Cheetar was something that I was like really captivated by, and because like the Intimidates plus Stand buff on both like as a lead in Arcanine plus Cheetar was something that like really stood out to me because you could get Intimidate to reduce their physical attack, and then you can have Stand to boost your special defense. And so like I instantly landed on Cheetar, Arcanine, Rillaboom, Como and Fluttermane, since Rillaboom also naturally fits well with Como with the double healing like leftovers plus Grassy. And then I had Empoleon originally as the first slot, and then ended up moving towards Ogerpon Wellspring, but both of those slots felt really underwhelming, and then eventually I landed an Iron Bundle, but like a couple weeks after the team had originally like I had originally started with this team. Um, and like I think it's not unusual for me to try to start with an idea and then like eventually move away from certain parts of the idea because they just don't work that well together. So like this team was really interesting because like I had come up with like basically the core part of the team, like the first four of Como, Tyranitar, Rillaboom, and Hisuian Arcanine, like basically like just randomly like day one of the format, and like it actually just ended up working out really well together. And like um because of that, like I've had a lot of practice on the team, which was like part of the reason why I did so well, I think, at the regional.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, and so, I mean, Komodo, you said, was the entire premise behind the team. You were on Tub Stakes this week, and you were throwing out some crazy Komodo calcs. But yeah, tell me more about Komodo and why you chose this set. Obviously, it's got a couple different ways it can be run, and why you chose. And tell me about the EV spread and whatnot.
Yeah, so I think the EV spread specifically, it's maximized for bulk, but like the specific break bench point is that at +2 defense, you OHKO Ogre Pawn if they're no bulk. And also just like in general, the reason why Como is good compared to previous Iron Defense Body Press users is that it only needs one turn to like take over a game. With Hisuian Gudra, you can actually like ignore it for a while and kind of pressure it and eventually like try to remove all of its teammates. And I never really liked the idea of running like a Grim Snarl or like basically like screen support for like a Pokemon like Gudra because you're investing so many resources, but the Pokemon is so slow to come online, so you're kind of pigeonholed into like a really slow game plan. And that's why I like Como because like it can immediately exert offensive pressure. And the interesting part about Como also is that like historically, like in the past generations, because dragon fighting has always been considered kind of like a really negative type because it's double weak to fairy, and fairies have always been good. But because of the way that Terra works, it now means that like Como is like the dragon fighting having a bigger set of resistances is more beneficial than like having negative weaknesses because like a type like steel dragon is because I'm comparing it to Gudra. Steel Dragon just doesn't have as many useful resistances compared to Dragon Fighting because like for Komo's case, like you resist a lot of common metagame threats, like for example Urshifu, and just like naturally you'll outbulk like Iron Hands. But also stuff like Chi-Yu, meaning that like out of all the special attackers in the format, like you either beat them before Terra or after Terra, with the exception of Armarouge. And then because of that, like it just allows Como to like have a strong natural typing into like a lot of attackers. So like you either can make a game plan around not tearing in a game, or make a game plan around being able to tear in a game, and then like that those can both be like really beneficial.
And then I remember I was watching your set, and everyone couldn't have the team sheets on stream. Everyone was confused as some plays that I think that Riley made because they didn't know that you were bulletproof and not overcoat. So tell me about, and I guess soundproof is also a semi-viable ability. So why choose bulletproof?
Yeah, I think it was kind of funny because yeah, everyone on Twitch is like, "Oh, you have T-Tar, and why are you not Overcoat?" You know, there's a Moongus as well in the format. But currently, Overcoat was definitely something that was originally looking at. But then the idea of Bulletproof is just that you have Fluttermane. It's a Pokemon that I mean, coming into the format, I was actually expecting it to actually be higher than the current usage rate of it was at 50%, but like coming off Reg D where it was at a 75, 80% usage rate, um, it was basically expected to be on every team. And having Steel Terra plus Bulletproof means that you are immune to Shadow Ball, allowing you to basically full wall Fluttermane. And that just allows you to have a strong matchup chart into all special attackers because obviously, like if you have with like Iron Defense, like if you get +2, like you can beat any physical attacker, barring specific gimmicks, which is like, if you have Sacred Sword, the exceptions would be like Sacred Sword and Crit, like from Urshifu, but like naturally resisting all those things already means that like you already beat all the physical attackers. So the important thing is to have good matchup into the strong special attackers. So obviously Fluttermane is like the most common special attacker. So having a good matchup into Fluttermane is really important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They never get to like shadow ball you safely, obviously, and then Moonblast is always risky because you're Terra type. Um, So yeah, and then I guess moving on to some of the other Pokemon, you mentioned Tyranitar and Arcanine kind of came as a pair. That there was something that you thought would work really well together. Talk to me, and you've got like some very interesting things on your Tyranitar, like Terra Psychic. You put the Assault Vest on there. I think Arcanine often carries Assault Vest, and then you've got moves like How on your Arcanines. Talk to me about those two Pokemon and why you've trained them the way that you did.
If you want to open this up. So, I actually, yeah, so this was my Reg C team, and this is like a lot of where some of the core ideas had come from. You actually, like, I noticed this in post because I didn't end up coming, like, I didn't build off of Reg C to make my Reg E team, but it ended up actually being a very similar team with like Bundle Flutter and then AV Tar with an Arcanine, and then I just changed the grass and the dragon to different Pokemon. But this team was much more built around the Howl idea because. Um, I was just like, I really liked the idea of Howl because it allows you to buff your physical attackers and you can make a lot of benchmarks, and it can take advantage of a lot of turns where opponents try to play more passively, and it unlocks a new way to play for Pokemon that like um, Guitar and Rillaboom, because if you can get a +1 in any case, then like it can give you calcs that like normally aren't open to you. And so the specific lines are with T-Tar and Rillaboom mostly with Howl, and having a Pokemon that howls that can also take advantage of the howl is really important because I was also testing with other Pokemon like Ninetales recently I was trying with, and then Screamtail in the past as well. But those Pokemon just like aren't good howl users because you need a Pokemon that can actually take advantage of that attack boost as well. So Arcanine is like a perfect candidate. So I like it on support sets because it allows you to be really aggressive with like a Pokemon with, even though you don't really have that much attack investment in it. And also, I just think that Wisp is really strong in the format. I had mentioned this on Tub, but I think Wisp in a very physically dominant meta, and a lot of people are actually opting away from Terrifier nowadays because of the fact that there aren't many Wisp users. In the past, Arcanine was really popular, but in more recent days, Arcanine has just mostly fallen off because of like the rise of Urshifu and other metagame threats. So Wisp is just not as common in the meta, so people are opting away from Terrifier. And because of that, Wisp just becomes stronger. And so I think fitting Wisp onto teams can be really challenging in a lot of times, but if you can do it in a somewhat natural way, like in this case with Hisuian Arcanine, it can just be really good. And then for T-Tar, I think T-Tar's set is like somewhat standard. Knockoff, Rock Slide, and Low Kick are expected moves. These are just like the best options T-Tar is available to it. But Terra Psychic, Terra Blast is the one thing that like will catch a lot of people's eye, of course. And I think the reason why I'm Terra Psychic as opposed to Terra Fairy, which is what a lot of people will ask me about, is because of the offensive capabilities of Terra Psychic. And mostly, you want to think about Terra Psychic not as a defensive Terra, but more of an offensive Terra, because it gives T-Tar basically perfect coverage into the meta. It allows it to hit stuff like Amoonguss and Urshifu and Iron Hands. And defensively, it's not terrible because it does give it a somewhat neutral typing because it allows it to do well into hands and like Heatran, for example, where Terra Fairy would be like weak to it. So it's like for the matchups where it's relevant, Terra Psychic is fine. And also there is another component of this. I wasn't really considering this in the team building process, but I did realize this after, is that like because Psychic is actually weak to Bug, it does make opponents more likely to click U-turn into T-Tar. Because like if you're leading Hisuian Arcanine and T-Tar, they find that U-turn is like the most consistent way to play like the early game, because like, oh, I know that I'm getting 50% into T-Tar, but like it actually ends up being that like U-turn is probably not their best play. Like they could go for a more aggressive play and try to stomping Hisuian Arcanine, or stomping T-Tar with their Landorus, but they normally just click U-turn instead, and that can mean that you can get really big early leads off of that. And so that's just like more of a psychological thing. So if people like figure that out, then obviously they can start just clicking stomping into Hisuian Arcanine. But that is something that like happens a lot on lead.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that I think you need to have played a lot of games with the team to catch on to that, which obviously again you've done, and I did not realize until you pulled it up. This is very very similar to the team that you brought in Reg C, and so yeah, and I'm not surprised that you are the most experienced player at the tournament, and that definitely contributed. But yeah, super super cool, especially with Terra Psychic as an offensive type. I've been saying There's just no good psychic types, and it's kind of skewing the way that that we like look at Iron Hands as a Pokemon, right? Where and Urshifu's Pokemon, where they don't have many things they're weak to that can hit them really hard, or especially a Mungus with those guys, right? And so Psychic is really cool as a way to hit those, even if you don't have a Psychic type, just because there kind of are no Psychic types. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, and then the Pokemon that I have been most impressed with on your team is actually the Rillaboom, because you were also talking about Miracle Seed, Terragrass, Rillaboom, Calx. Everyone's kind of been running an Assault Vest variant, kind of defensive, and this is one of the first people you were the first people I've seen use this offensive variant to a lot of success. But yeah, the damage output is crazy. Tell me about why you chose this Rillaboom set and how it performed for you.
Yeah, so I think Rillaboom, I had run a or actually I had run I think Citrus Berry Rillaboom at Worlds, and um I think when I came into this or into this format, I was like, okay, well, T-Tar is getting this Alt Vest. It has too much value. Like T-Tar can't run another item really effectively, especially like in the current meta. I think there are other ideas that you could have tried, like I could have tried like clear amuletors and stuff, but like generally speaking, I think Assault Vest is just really good on T-Tar because it double stacks with Sand, so you're getting like double value basically, or it's like slightly more value than you would on normal Pokemon. So like Rillaboom couldn't have that option available to it, and also with the Pokemon of like with T-Tar, Arcanine, and Como, I was a little bit scared of like a Mungus, since all three of those Pokemon are not immune to Spore, and like if it were to be able to just click Terra on me, then I could just easily lose the game immediately. So taunt, having the option to run taunt on Rillaboom was something that was important to me in this on this team, and so I was thinking like, if I'm not running Assault Vest and I'm on a taunt variant, how else can I take advantage of Rillaboom? Because I could just run, Citrus Berry, but I would rather have that on Arcanine as well. So then like, and I have leftovers on Rillaboom, or sorry, I have leftovers on Como. So like, then I was like kind of going down the options, and then I just landed on Miracle Seed. I was like, okay, this is probably the best item I could give it, and so like it was kind of like by accident that I just like discovered this set, and then I was like, okay, well, if I'm going Miracle Seed, I might as well try Terra Grass and stuff, and then I realized like I had like a big revelation with the team because I had been playing it for like a couple weeks, and then at a like before a local, like the week before Sacramento, I just realized like, oh, like if I just click Terra Grass and Grassy Glide, it just OHKOs Fluttermane straight up. So like that just like I just started understanding a lot more of the calcs of Rillaboom, and especially in lines where if you can get a Howl onto Rillaboom, which is actually pretty tricky, but if you can get that situation up, if you can basically win the game, because if you get a +1 onto Rillaboom, against most offensive teams, they just straight up have no answer, and you just win the game just off of that. Um, and so like that unlocked a different dimension for the team for me. And once I like started realizing that, even though it was not something like I had planned for when building the team, but like it was something that I learned after playing the team a lot, is that Rillaboom is just like a really good Pokemon, and I think that because of its ability to just output insane amounts of damage, it is supposed to be a support Pokemon, but like it really isn't. Like it's basically a carry for this team. Like it does it during Sacramento. I think I actually tarried it probably the second most after Arcanine, and so like even though people looking at the team, you see Como, you see T-Tar, and they stand out a lot, especially with like, oh, those Pokemon are Terra Hogs, you would think, because of their 4 times weaknesses. Rillaboom actually was one of the Pokemon I tarred the most because it just outputs so much damage, and so you can get a lot of pinned situations off of that. Like, they could Terra Fairy to like resist my body press, but then I could hit them with a Terra Grass Wood Hammer, and then they're just dying to that. So like that kind of situation came up a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm surprised that we hadn't seen a little more of that, but yeah, I think that's just an extremely powerful thing people are overlooking, especially with how I think that's an especially good point. I think people are going to try. a little more of because they already have that natural defensive synergy on top of that. It seems like a very strong lead, and it seems like honestly, if you lead it and you get to like fake out how, that's just a pretty good turn one against a lot of boards.
Yeah. I think the only real weakness is with against Heatran. Generally Pokemon that like 4x resist grass with a set that has two grass attacking moves are going to do well, but also because the other Pokemon that resist grass like Ogerpon and or Ogerpon Fire and Amoonguss are less threatening because they can be dealt with to a certain extent by Hisuian Arcanine. In Heatran's case, it kind of just full walls. So you do have to be careful when playing against teams that have Heatran. But other than that, like it is very good against like very offensive teams and against teams with like Torn, especially if they're not Covert Cloak. I like the Hisuian Arcanine Rillaboom lead a lot because if you can get this Howl off, then you can just start killing whatever's in the other slot basically every single turn.
Yeah. And then I guess the last two Pokemon, Fluttermane, Iron Bundle. These sets are definitely not too out there, pretty standard. But yeah, you want to talk about those two and why you chose these sets, why you chose these EV spreads, etc.
Yeah, so originally Fluttermane was actually like I had them consolidated into one role where it was the um, speed booster flutter, and I had moved off it because it felt that in like most of my games I ended up just landing on the other four. So I basically wanted to bring have Pokemon that could polarize my other matchups and have more options to give more dimensions to the team because the core four of Como, T-Tar, Hisuian Arcanine, and Rillaboom were like bringable in like many matchups. And so I basically like limit tested it to like see which matchups I could like realistically bring them in, and like I felt that in most of them I could just bring those four. And so what I wanted in the other two slots were Pokemon that were like matchup Pokemon that specifically could deal with things that I was weak to, and also give me like a different dimension and way to play the team. And that's like a lot of why I landed on Bundle, is because it was good into Lando, which is a Pokemon that was annoying for my other four Pokemon. And also it allowed me to play like a much faster version of the team. So Bundle alongside Hisuian Arcanine can be really good because like Icy Wind plus Flare Blitz, even with no attack investment, will mostly pick up Flutters. Like you have to be decently bulky to survive it. And then also like there were games where I wanted to try to bring like Flutter Bundle just to like scare my opponent into thinking like, okay, like that is a possibility that they could bring in the front, and if they don't respect it, then they could just lose on turn one. Um, and so that was like Bundle was actually a Pokemon that impressed me a lot. And another thing that Bundle brings to the team is actually that it deals with the Dozo matchup really well. I played a couple Dozos, but it was pretty well showcased in the stream match that Donald played against Marcus Strider or Marcus Dion Strider, and Bundle just has always been a Pokemon that has a really good Dozo matchup, but especially like paired with Rillaboom, it just allows it to stay on the field for longer. And so the core of like Rillaboom, Arcanine, and Bundle can give you a pretty solid Dozo matchup like regardless of what the Dozo is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you talked about how to approach the Dozen matchup a little bit. Did you have any general tips for how to play the team or like common modes that you went for?
Yeah, so I think the one thing is that since I've noticed some other people playing the team, since people have gotten their hands on the rental kit in the past couple of days and have tried it, one thing that I've noticed a lot from other people is that they are very willing to lead Como, which most of the time I was not leading Como unless it's a very Como is like a really really good matchup, or you have to because you're in a bad matchup where you have to force Como. I often leave Como in the back and try to force out answers in the front, because Como is like it's kind of hard to pivot out once you get it in. Sometimes you can, but it's not. It's like pretty situational. And so what I like to do is lead Hisuian Arcanine and T-Tar, or Hisuian Arcanine and like Rillaboom a lot of times, and or even Rillaboom, T-Tar, and Trick Room matchups. But Hisuian Arcanine and T-Tar was like my lead in probably like 60% of the games I played. And a lot of that is because they just are forced to play into it a certain way. Like, if you if they yeah. So there's like a lot of different things that can happen, but basically like if they kill you with like a Lando, like if they take a KO with stomping early in the game and you can get in your Como for free on a choice locked Landorus, then you can basically win off of that. Or like there's like a lot of different situations that come up, but like what I'm trying to say is basically that like Hisuian Arcanine and T-Tar like force a lot of uncomfortable situations for the opponent. Is that like either they can they're forced to deal with it by like making committal reads or committing a lot of resources to dealing with those Pokemon. And if they do end up doing that, then a lot of times that you can have Como in the back and clean up. And that was something that like was really important for me throughout the weekend because like a lot of people with this team specifically is that like they didn't understand the matchup that well going into the weekend because they just had never played something like this before. And so showing something like a Hisuian Arcanine and T-Tar can be really good because like if you have Como in the back, they may not be like thinking about it like presently in their mind, and they're like, okay. A lot of players will think about like, oh, how do I get an advantage on this turn and winning the current turn? But like an important thing to know about this team is that you need to understand like how you're going to win from like how your turn one is going to affect your turn five and whatnot. So like the most common example is as the one I was giving earlier is that like you can lead Hisuian Arcanine and T-Tar, and sometimes if they KO one of your Pokemon, it can put you in a better position. So it's fine to like stack your Pokemon early to just like have a better position for later into the game. And that's just like a common theme for this team is that like you just need to understand like what your win conditions for every point in the game is, and a lot of that is practice, and like that's not like the easiest thing to intuit, but like um that was something that was like really important towards like how to win with this team is that understanding like when is fine to Terra and when is not fine to Terra, because you may gain an earlier advantage by trying to Terra Water your Arcanine to survive a stomping, but that may not end up winning you the game because they have Fluttermane in the back, and then you actually needed the Terra Steel on your Como or like situations like that. So basically, like the important thing to know for this team is like you need to understand like the long term game plans a lot more in this team than like making incremental advantages, I guess.
Makes a lot of sense. And I guess would you say there are any matchups that you thought were especially difficult, or any matchups that you felt like you had a especially linear game plan against?
Yeah, sure. So I think versus like standard teams, generally the core four Pokemon of Como, T-Tar, Rillaboom, and Arcanine are always going to be good. The order that you bring them in can change and vary depending on the actual version of the team. So, for example, a team that is very weak to Como, I like to lead Rillaboom in Como or Arcanine in Como, and you can often just lead it and set up Iron Defense on turn one and win the game. Um, Teams that are less weak to that, you may want to lead Arcanine and T-Tar, like I was saying earlier, and try to force out answers, and then have Como in the back to try to clean up. And then versus like less standard teams, it it kind of just depends like on what their exact Pokemon are. So, some matchups that were troublesome for me, like coming into the tournament, mons that I knew were going to be troublesome were like Sinistcha, Okidogi, um, Golden Go, and like Dusclops and stuff. But like generally anything that can beat Como, Annihilate and stuff, Ghost types, a lot of them would be, or like Terra Ghost mons. And those are like a thing that ties a lot of those mons together. Is that either they are Terra Ghost commonly run or are Ghost type naturally, and they are bulky. Those types of Pokemon tend to be really annoying for this team because since it basically prevents you from using the Como mode, and you're forced into playing like a really weird game plan without it, or like you're forced if you do bring it, then you have to like force a really awkward situation where like it forces their Ghost type to Terra or whatever it is. Luckily, I didn't actually end up running into much of it this weekend, so I just got really lucky in that sense. But those are some of the tough matchups, and in those situations, you just want to try to force like a knockoff on T-Tar into that slot or whatever. And amongst like the more common teams, I would say Heatran, Terra Fairy Heatran is the Pokemon that is definitely the toughest for this team. Especially like if they're really really bulky, it can be really annoying because um, a lot of your mons are just kind of full walled by it. Arcanine is really bad into it. Como will lose to it 1v1 unless you have gotten prior boost. Rillaboom can't force it to Terra, and it can do damage if it is Terra'd, but like it does take so much damage back. So you're really relying heavily on T-Tar to try to deal with this Heatran, and so it's not like the easiest matchup, and it can be really annoying, especially if they are good at protecting their Heatran for longer periods of the game.
That makes a lot of sense. I know we saw you take that on in top four against Raghav, and you managed to beat it, but it was definitely a really, really close set. And but yeah, I guess on that note, do you want to talk about your tournament experience and tell me about a couple of the notable matches you played? I know you talked about it a little more in depth on Top Takes, but maybe a couple highlight matches for this video.
Yeah, sure. So just quickly going through it, I actually lost my round one. So this is a very similar run that I had at NAIC where I had lost round one. And this time I was playing a friend of mine who was running a really jank team. He had a Zoroark Hisuian team, and his entire team I was actually based around not having any abilities that activated off of lead. So you wouldn't be able to tell if any of his Pokemon were um, immediately illusion because if there's TU or some other some other Pokemon like Intimidate Pokemon or whatever, it automatically tells you whether they're um like illusioned or not. So having a lot of options to uh illusion into was something that was like the core focus of this team. And then what ended up happening is that I won game one convincingly and he won game two pretty convincingly, and then in game three it came down to a situation where I just misread the team sheet and I wasn't really thinking about it heavily, but it was a there was a Terrafire Flutter Mane there, and I had clicked the Terragrass Grassy Glide into the Flutter Mane expecting it to KO, and it Terrafired and didn't KO. So I lost round one off that. Um, but then I think like a lot of that was also just like I wasn't that focused. I hadn't slept well the night before and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of just took that, knew that I could still do well and was still confident. So rounds 2 through 8 were all 2-0s. Like I didn't drop a single game until round 9. And a lot of that was just like I had good matchups across the board. A lot of my opponents weren't ready for my team at all. Even the one guy who I played who had a pretty good matchup into me, which was a Sinistral team. He just clearly didn't understand how to play against the team at all, which I don't necessarily blame him for it, but he didn't like click Trick Room, and he made it a lot easier on me. He early teared his Sinistral and that kind of stuff. So um, if people got more practice against my team, that kind of thing probably won't happen as much. But since like this is like a very new archetype, or like nobody else was playing it other than me and Donald, like it wasn't expected that everyone would know the matchup. So having that was a big advantage. And then going into round 9, I played Stohybe, and his team, if you want to pull it up. This is like a pretty good example of a team that is like pretty standard and something that you want to be playing against with this team for the most part is Como just is really good in these types of games where it forces your opponent to be like um, very committal towards like playing into it, and utilizing that you can try to make more aggressive plays. So the Heatran is Terra Fairy, but it does have a life orb, meaning that you can try to play around whittling its HP. If you can knock it with T-Tar, that can be something that's really important. And then Como can just deal with all the rest of the Pokemon. Because if you can either kill the Heatran or kill the Fluttermane or whatever, like you would need, you basically just need, the win condition is that you can either win by not tearing your Como or tearing your Como, basically. And so if you can eliminate all the Pokemon that can beat it in one form or the other, then you can just win the game. And traditionally, like you would think, like okay, Landorus Therian or Iron Hands might be okay if they Terra Steel, but you actually just don't do enough damage. So like having just like if you're able to kill that Heatran off and then have a Terra Steel Como, it can actually just beat the rest, like of Landorus, Fluttermane, and Iron Hands because they just won't deal enough damage back to you. And so that was like showcased well in this match. I mean, no VOD, so can't like actually show the match, but this would be like a good example of a team that is standard that they have ways to play into you, but you should have like a good matchup if you play it well.
Makes sense. And so you finished, despite losing round one, you finished 8-1 in day one. Did you have a couple highlights of your day two run?
Yeah, so round one, I played Brian Collins, who actually also cut, and I was like pretty impressed with him because I after I beat him, he still had his all six of his mons at the time, but then he lost his Gallade the round after I played him, so he had one out, three in a row to make cut from from that spot, like and then like he went from I think 8-1 to 8-2, and then he went to 11-2, and then lost his last round to but still made cut. So um, yeah, this is a matchup like Trick Room teams is a matchup where T-Tar is really shines. Obviously, I think like Armorage and NDD are Pokemon that can't touch T-Tar, so and being able to have the stand reset Torkoal is like hugely beneficial for you. And T-Tar like completely took over game one. He Wicked Blowed, he locked into Wicked Blow on turn one, and then T-Tar just ran through the rest of his team basically on in game one. He like Helping Hand, I think Terra Dark, Wicked Blowed, and OHKO'd um my Hisuian Arcanine, but that allowed the rest of my team to basically win from there because then he couldn't deal with my T-Tar. And then like he won game two after getting out Trick Room, and then game three was a similar situation where he led Urshifu, and then he locked into Wicked Blow. And this was part of like what I was saying before is that like you want to like hold onto your Terra like as long as possible with this team because um, if you can, like a lot of people will just expect you to Terra since you're weak to Pokemon, since you're like weak to a fighting move, like oh he's gonna Terra Psychic or whatever. But if you just hold it, a lot of times they just won't punish you, and you have to be just ballsy with the team in that sense because sometimes you'll just get punished and they'll call you out on it, and you may just end up losing the game off that. But like sometimes, like if you can be very ballsy with that kind of stuff and hold your chair as long as possible, it can be like really rewarding for an end game situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know that I think the inverse is true for this team as well. They have to be willing to make those hard calls when you're playing a team as offensive as Saipan. But yeah, it seems like you definitely had a Tyranitar seems like it just puts in a lot of work here. So
Yeah,
yeah,
of course.
um, yeah, and then you had of course played Raga before. I know that you played him in top four as well. That was on stream, but yeah, tell me about your first matchup with Raghav.
Yeah, Raghav. So I had actually got some info since Donald had played Raghav previously. I think it was in day one actually, like in round eight or something. Was it? But basically Raghav. Oh no, it was in round nine, I believe. But yeah, Raghav. I had already known that this was going to be a really troublesome matchup. In fact, I actually was like thinking about some of the lines into what I could do into his team from like the previous night, just because I knew that this was something that was likely to come up in day two. And so coming into the game, I thought like the most important thing was that I needed to make aggressive plays because basically like in matchups where I have like a safe win condition, I don't need to play aggressively. I can just play for Como endgame, and they're forced to play aggressively into me to make reads and stuff. But in matchups where it's like uphill, like this one against a very bulky Heatran, especially the one with Magma Storm, which was the thing that ended up giving me the most trouble, is that you just have to play really aggressive and make reads. So in this set, in game one, I just tried what the game plan I was thinking about coming into the day, which was like trying to force a Terra on Heatran and then going for a Woodhammer with Rillaboom. And it just didn't end up working out because it just didn't do enough damage. And his Heatran is just really bulky. I don't know the exact spread necessarily, but it's very heavily invested in bulk and a lot bulkier than Eddie Heatran had played up until that point. So I just like wasn't able to kill it, and um, basically like with the grassy terrain and leftovers, and then eventually he got a Aurora Veil. Like I was just never able to kill it, and because of that, I just lost game one. And then in game two, I made like a very aggressive early read to like get Heatran off the field early, and ended up in a situation like an end game with like I think or no, sorry, I got the Heatran very weak early with like a knockoff and stuff, but basically I ended up in an end game where it was like a Rillaboom and Como versus like Ninetales and Heatran, and then Rogov just won in like there was a 50-50 call where I was grassy gliding with my Rillaboom, and Rogov just got me there. And you know Rogov's a great player, so even if I play well and I make all the right reads and whatever it is, he can still just beat me, especially in a matchup where he's favored. So that was all like information that was super necessary that I needed to take in when I started my match in top four as well, because yeah, I think if I hadn't played him in Swiss, I probably would have lost that top four matchup, if I'm honest, because like some of the things that I thought would work versus him just didn't work. Like my game one that I lost, where had come up with a game plan to try to force Heatran to Terra and try to go force a Rillaboom angle, which is like not something that would ever work. It never does enough damage. So I just like misjudged like the situation, and because of that, I didn't try that in my top four match, and I didn't like lose a game for free basically, and allowed me to come up with a better game plan. So yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, you managed to win out. You didn't lose another set, not only, of course, in Swiss, but also in Top Cut. Were there any highlight matches that you wanted to talk about for, I guess, the rest of Swiss?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just quickly run through them. Alex and I are good friends, and his team just didn't have a good matchup. We had already played previously at at a local the week before, and I beat both Donald and Alex playing this team, and I just like realized that there was like one really good way to play this matchup, which is like they have to super respect the idea of bundle and history and Arcanine, and without going into too much detail about it, basically like it forces like very specific lines because if I lead bundle Arcanine into like Flutter Wheezing, I just like win the game on turn one, which is what happened in game one. And then if I do lead that in but they lead like double grass, then I could just swap Como, and if I get an Iron Defense off, I win on turn one as well. So like either situation is just really tough for him and is a super uphill matchup. So I won that game one, and then game two, I missed, or sorry, like the last turn I got crit on like a high horsepower or something, and I lost that game. And then game three, I just capitalized on the matchup. So like I won all of the games, or I won game one and three, and then game two, like it was like I lost to basically a last turn crit, and I think like it was a matchup that was just like very much in my favor. And Alex made like a lot of good plays to try to get in, but it was just like a very hard matchup, and I had already known that from like locals previously. So yeah. And then Neil, I also just had a really strong matchup into his team. He has yeah, he just didn't really have good Como answers. So like once I got Como set up, like I would just won the game off of that. And yeah, that's basically like exactly as it happened. And then same with Shane. Shane also just didn't have a good matchup into me. I think I led History and Arcanine and T-Tar into his team, and then he just couldn't really do anything about it. So I just won the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the thing that was like most notable about this team was that so many of my games in Swiss just came down to the fact that they just did not have a good matchup to me, and I just won off that. Like, the matchup was like 70-30 or better in my favor, where um, the opponent, they needed to make incredible plays like every single game to like outposition me to be able to win those games. And on top of the fact that they didn't have the matchup knowledge, like they just wouldn't be able to beat my team. So like that's why like a lot of my sets in Swiss ended up just being 2-0 because my opponents just didn't have any matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you just had the call for the tournament, right? No one was ready for your team, which is always and it's cool to see you get rewarded for that. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, like you said, it feels like. I mean, I watched the final set, right? That was on stream, and that was just
Mm.
so one sided. I guess we'll get to talking about that real soon. But yeah, I guess the top cut set against Aaron, I don't think that one was streamed. What happened there?
Yeah, so I think Aaron's team is actually it's interesting because going into the set you're like people might be thinking like oh he lost to Rogov, they're running kind of similar teams, or like if he said that Rogov's team is a good matchup, why not Aaron's team? So one thing that's like really important to know in the Heatran matchup and also just in general with this team is that like B tiers are super relevant, and something that I'm not sure like how much my opponents were paying attention to this, but this is something that I was paying attention to a lot. Is that there's a lot of things that you can figure out just from the EV spread, or sorry, from the end of turn activations, and between like leftovers, grassy terrain, and sand chip, like there's a lot of things that you can tell from that, and some of the more dubious like EV spreads, like Heatran is a specific one that's like really important to know. Is whether you're faster or slower than Heatran tends to be something that's really important in this in Heatran matchups, and how they're EV trained in general is always something that dictates heavily how the matchup is played. In this matchup specifically, like Ogerpon Wellspring and King Gambit are like almost unbringable against me because if you bring them into Como, then it's just like really doomed. And then his Ninetales also doesn't have a fairy move. Blizzard alone is actually not enough to force Como to Terra. And because of that, like, and the fact that his Heatran was not that slow and not that physically bulky, I think I had a lot of special attack and maybe special defense investment. I'm not too sure, but because of that, I was actually able to force the Como really hard. And even though like technically Ninetales, it hits it super effectively with special damage, but because of Ninetales' low special attack stat and also just like not being 4x in this case, like it actually allowed Como to kind of just tank hits and ended up being like a very Como centric matchup as well.
Yeah, and unsurprisingly, in what sounds like a lot of the Komoa matchups, you also once again 2-0'd him, uh, and that brought you back to your set against Rugga. And so, like you said, you said that you wouldn't win the set if not for the first set, and of course this was a really close set. It was streamed, and definitely recommend rewatching it. But did you have any commentary on your second set with Rugga?
Yeah. So basically, just going in, I knew that I was like I knew I had played aggressively and I had played a good set in Swiss, but I just needed to crank that to the next level. Like anytime I was thinking about, if I make an aggressive play early in the game, like I need to really close that out because even if I have advantages, he can still get back into the game. So like that was something that I kept in mind like while playing the set and like dictated a lot of how I wanted to play the set because like I knew that the matchup was tough, so like I needed to like really crank open any advantage I got. And so I built my original game plan around like the T-Tar heavily, and in game one, he let me knock his Heatran, and then we ended up getting into end game where I dodged a Magma Storm, but like I think from that position I still won, and basically like I got into a situation where Como was set up and I was able to since I was able to knock his Heatran, it got chipped enough where I could end up finishing it off with Como, and I did get like pretty lucky in game three, where I dodged two Magma Storms. I had a conversation about this previously with some other people, but I'm still not sure like what the outcome of that game would have been if, like, depending on like the Magma Storm hits and misses. Like I got lucky for sure, but I'm not like I think there was a chance I could have won even if Magma Storm had hit, and then like obviously if he missed the first one and then hit the second one, but no crit, like I still probably would have won from there. And so like it all kind of just like depends because in both games 1 and 3, he actually crits my Como like on with the first stomping tantrum, which like it makes the game seem closer. Uh, or like I guess like it's hard to tell where exactly that HP bar would have been, like without the crit, but with the magma storm hits, like that kind of stuff. So there's like a lot of like luck on both sides, I guess, on that front. So it was just a really close set, and I tried like a bunch of different things because like in game two, I also tried to show the Flutter bundle, and I was talking actually with other people about this, but funnily enough, I think the fact that I played Flutter Bundle ended up conditioning him for game three, but also ended up conditioning Riley, who was watching the set, for the next set as well, because he led something really weird in game two of our set that I think it was because he thought that I might try a Flutter Bundle lead in game two of finals.
Yeah, and I think on Tub Takes, you said that, of course, you played Riley in finals. He was coming off a winner, Pittsburgh Regionals, top eight at Peoria, maybe the best player so far this season. But you said that on Tub Takes, that both the games felt like they were over on turn one. You got a call right, and you'd won. Tell me more about what your thought process was going into finals and how those matches played out.
Yeah, so when the bracket was originally drawn, I was like pretty annoyed because I knew that Ragov was the only one I couldn't beat, and so like yeah, well, even going into the set against Ragov, I thought that I was going to lose, and it took me some luck to win that, and so like I wasn't really expecting to get into finals, but I had previewed this matchup since Donald had played him in Swiss, and so I had an idea of how he was going to approach the matchup. And Donald actually told me, like, before finals, I got the whole rundown of like what he tried and what he did. So like going into the game, I had an information advantage because he, like, technically yes, he has played against the team, but like, I mean, and I'm not trying to blame Donald or anything, but I'm definitely much more proficient in the team than he is. And so I understood a lot more of the angles of what I was supposed to do in the matchup. And I think Riley was somewhat misled in how the matchup is supposed to be played. And so in game one, he leads Chen Pao and King Gambit. And so this was a lead I was expecting because this is what he led game one into Donald as well. And I thought, like, if he did this, I'm going to body press and then wisp his Chen Pao. And this is 100% winning play because if he basically if he attacks, like, he could double protect, doesn't matter. Like, basically if he Terra's his King Gambit, which is the only way that he doesn't die to body press, is that he can't Terra his Chen Pao, and then I win off of that. If he like, then he basically just has to like pivot and protect and whatever, but then like any position where he's in against Hisuian Arcanine is just going to be tough because his Chen Pao can't Oko it, and I also have the option to Terra Water if the board is like is Urshifu and Chen Pao, and then if I wisp the Chen Pao, then I win the game as well because then he has nothing to threaten Como. So like on turn one, I would get the KO on his King Gambit and wisp the Chen Pao, and then I basically win the game from there because then he has nothing to threaten Como, and then also he is down him on. So like there wasn't anything that he could really do from that position, and then like I think like a lot of people, were. It was funny because in that game, like if you watch it back, I Flare Blitz the Urshifu in the next turn, and then I like Taunt it with Rillaboom and on turn three, and they were like, "Oh my god, you made such an amazing read into the Amoonguss switch," and I was like, but like I had already known that the game was over, so I was like literally like playing for the cliff because like I was like just like, yeah, like this is a possibility that could happen, and I think it would be cool if I got the Flare Blitz into the Amoonguss switch where I Flare Blitzed Urshifu, but like I had already known that the game was over, like regardless of what Riley did from that spot. Um, and then game two was like kind of similar. Like I had said earlier that I thought his lead was just really weird because what he led was, I think it was Ogerpon and Urshifu was it or something. But basically like um because he led like Ogerpon Urshifu or whatever it was, like it basically meant that I just clicked Iron Defense on turn one, and then the thing with POW is that it needs to actually be out on turn one to heavily pressure the Como, because if you just leave it in an end game, which is what ended up happening, is that like you need a crit to be able to beat Como, and you had I think he had 3 chances to crit me. And so that was like basically like I knew that like if I was in an endgame with Como versus Pao, which is what ended up happening, then I would still win that endgame barring crits, and that's what happened. So because of that, like I was just playing towards that the entire game because like once I got up the Iron Defense, I could just slowly kill off all of his other Pokemon, and then I set up the 1v1 with Como versus Pao, and then because it like he did get the crit, then I just won the tournament off of that.
Yeah. And yeah, and like you said, you won the tournament, which is awesome. And your first time regional champion. I'm sure that there are going to be at least. I'm excited to see what you do for the rest of the season. And I would not be shocked to see another one coming up. But yeah, are you going to any upcoming events?
Yeah, the next one I'll be going to is San Antonio, and then I'll be going to, I think, Portland and Vancouver this season. And then other than that, I think LA is like a very maybe for me, and then probably NAIC. So those are like the events I'm planning to do. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird experience for me because, coming into this tournament, I hadn't even day two to regional. I had day two to NAIC, but I have never cut any event before, like even before the day two format. So, just like I I think like there were definitely people who knew who I was, but like, being vaulted straight from, somebody like a somebody that some people knew to like, winning the tournament, it's like a completely different experience, I guess, for me. So, I don't know. It's just been crazy couple days.
I bet. And yeah, so what do you think about this team, about your team moving forward? Do you think it's going to be do you think it's going to show up at the regionals in France and the regionals in Toronto in the next couple of weeks? And do you think the metagame is going to adapt to it? And would there also would you make any changes to it moving forward? I guess.
Yeah, so changes, no. I think this team is as optimized as it can be. There's a lot of things that you could look at and say like, oh, this and this, but like any change that you make will make the team worse in some way or another, in my opinion. And so like the only one caveat to that is that the fourth move on Flutter, I never figured out something that was good. In fact, Flutter was actually my least brought mod throughout the course of the entire tournament, which like, it might be shocking to some people, but like, yeah, Flutter was kind of like the weakest link in a lot of ways, but I mean, it was still good for what it did. I don't think there's a mod that can do better in its slot, but the fourth move, I'd never clicked it, so that is something that could change. I think on this face I have Trick Room. The one I bought in the tournament had Psyshock. I don't like. I just think it doesn't matter. Realistically, like anything works. I think Donald had Power Gem, but like whatever. I think it really doesn't matter. As for the metagame and like how other people will adapt to it, I hope other people bring this team, because like, I'm very proud of like this team. Like I basically worked on it for like a month, and out of any team, I feel like it's been one of the most refined teams I've ever built, and just like ever in my like 10 plus years of playing Pokemon or whatever it is. Because like, how long I worked on it, all the EV spreads, everything. Like, so I do hope that other people can have success with it. I don't know if that will happen necessarily, because I do feel that the reason why I was successful as this team was a lot to do with the fact that like how much I played with it and the knowledge, experience I had with this team, and not only with this team, but like also with the same archetype that I had been playing for a while, as I had to like call back to the Reg C team. Um, so like the way that you have to play the team is very aggressive, and it very much suits the way that I play the game. So if other people can have success with it, I would be really happy to see that. I don't know if that's going to happen though. And I do think that like with a team like this, which is more off meta, and I did say like, I gained a lot of advantage from the fact that people don't have any practice against it. I think that it will be harder to win another tournament like with just using the same thing, because I now that I've won the tournament, it's going to be on people's radars, and people will have to consider it as something that's real, not just like, okay, it's guitar or whatever. Like I'm not just don't play in tournament or whatever, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so I think like realistically speaking, what I think is most likely is that pieces of this team, ideas from this team can be used in other places, but I don't think that this exact six will necessarily, show up in top cut of another tournament. Is my opinion on it.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I've already seen obviously Cybertron use this, made a video with the team earlier this week. I saw that one of my locals was running it at the local I played in yesterday. So I think a lot of people are really excited by this team. Would not shock me for a lot of people to bring it to tournaments, though. Obviously, not as experienced as you are, but we're going to see. I'm excited to see if people can keep innovating on it for the upcoming regionals. But yeah, those are all the questions I have. We have the rental code on screen. If you want to be one of those people to tries out the team, would definitely recommend it. So again, rental code is on screen, and then the paste will be in the description down below. Michael, did you have any final words or shout outs that you wanted to give?
Yeah, big shout outs to Donald, and I mean, I have a lot of people in the VGC community who've shown a lot of support to me in the past couple weeks, or sorry, past couple days, just like after the tournament win, but also just like Donald was someone who like supported me, and he actually wasn't originally planning on running this team, but his support on no, he was the one who came up with the bundle idea, but also just like his support throughout the tournament in terms of like giving me info was the reason I ended up winning. Like I said in the finals, like a matchup for finals and the matchup against Rogov, both were things that I had prepped because of the information that Donald had given me beforehand. And like I have plenty of other people like from like Alex and Gina, and the other people from Seattle who gave me a lot of support. And I think like the wider VGC community in general was just very happy to see like a very off meta team win. And I think this is definitely one of the teams that's like super off the radar. So I do hope that more people can have success with this team. I'd be really happy to be wrong about the fact that it won't show up in another top cut, because I think like more than anything else, the thing that brings like the most happiness for me playing VGC or in Pokemon in general, I guess, is like building teams and the team building process. And so having a team that was really successful and ended up being kind of like the meta call, if other people can capitalize on that and have even more success with this team, it would be like that would make me really happy. So yeah, I'm hoping that other people can try it and have fun with the team.
Yeah, I hope so too. And like I said, if you want to try it out, the rental code is on screen right now. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it, and congratulations once again for winning the Sacramento Regional Championships. And yeah, that's all I got. So until next time, I will see you all later.
Thank you.